Yo, what's going on? I don't ever start a video like that. That was weird. Welcome back to my channel. I know this is different. This is how I'm going to be, primarily filming videos on my second channel, Ever Talks Everything. But I basically just wanted to have a very candid conversation about the new Jack Harlow album, all the stuff kind of surrounding it, because I'm not going to do a formal review on this project. I don't think it deserves it. And I don't really think he deserves it. And I think what he is doing right now, not on the music side, but on the publicity side, is kind of disgusting and is honestly, I hope, ruining his career. I don't really think he was ever someone who had massive talent anyways, or someone who deserved to have a massive limelight shown on him or needed the ears to pay attention to what he was saying. If anything, it could have been proved on his last album, but he ended up dropping the ball on that too. But, when it comes to the album, I see a lot of people giving it praise, and some very high praise. People rating it, like 8 out of 10s, or and some people even higher, which I think is crazy. I think that the highest I could go for this is like a 5 out of 10. On Album of the Year, I rated it a flat 50 because I think it's about as passable as can be, just straight middle of the road, because he's clearly taking massive inspiration from 90s and early 2000s R&B, people like Erykah Badu, D'Angelo, and, he is changing his whole aesthetic. He's dipping away from rap. And part of the problem of where that comes from is not necessarily the music. If you want to experiment and do something else, I think that any artist should be allowed that right and that freedom to do so. But it's his commentary on it. And for him to say I've always loved R&B and soul and neo soul, that would be one thing. But he's saying this as a way to sort of almost prove a point about himself, it seems. And my biggest problem came from his Popcast interview. And if you don't know what the Popcast is, it is a podcast that comes from the New York Times. It's these two white dudes who I think are pretty plain. I don't think they ask the greatest questions. They don't create these great conversations. I think they're good at listening and starting a dialogue, but keeping the dialogue going, or sometimes asking these hard questions is where they fail at. And they ask Jack, who is Monica? The title of this project. And, in my head, I was like, I can't wait to see this answer, because when this got announced, me and even my girlfriend at the time were looking at each other and we're like, this seems kind of on the nose, doesn't it? And a lot of people I see online are saying the same exact thing of he's got to be joking, right? This, surely he can't be naming his album Monica, just it's got to be named for someone. He can't be playing in everyone's face like that. And sure enough, he doesn't answer the question. The simple answer he gives is, it's just a name I always liked. That's kind of strange. That's a weird answer to give. You're better off just saying, lying and being oh, it's my girlfriend. But no, he just says, oh, it's a name I always liked. Why? Why is it a name you like? So that was weird. But then they also talk about how white artists are sort of given this privilege of taking a genre that they start in, and they're allowed to experiment more than any other race of artists, just in history. White artists are given this privilege amongst their fans to start in a genre and to choose whatever direction to go into. Whether it's Post Malone going from rap to pop singer-songwriter stuff to straight country, or if it would be Machine Gun Kelly going from rap to pop punk to now kind of straight pop, or so many other just different artists. It could be if you take someone like Garth Brooks, who did, he's a massive country star, but he had that one album that was more like alternative, bit, I wouldn't say like grungy, but a little bit just darker in tone. You know, these people who are given the opportunity to switch around, but a lot of times when other artists try to do that, they are ridiculed for it. And they ask him about that. And Jack starts off the question good, I think, where he acknowledges that privilege, but instead he says, you know, he wanted to sort of prove himself, and instead of steering away and going towards what would be a wider genre, he doesn't say that the music got blacker. He says, I got blacker. He himself, a white man from Kentucky, he got blacker. He himself is getting blacker as a person. What do you mean by that? Is how I feel. Like the Juicy clip. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Like, I don't know. I feel like this whole shindig he's trying to pull here, it is just a charade to basically prove himself in some way. He's trying to be someone he isn't. And to me, that's kind of where I have my problem with Jack Harlow is it's the same thing as Drake. He is like the white Drake of where, like, can they create a good song? Sure. But largely the reason why their music just continues to fail when they put out album after album lately, especially for someone like Drake, Jack Harlow, it's kind of been since the beginning of his career, in my opinion. The reason why they fail is because they're attempting to be people that they are not. They are just trying to appease to different audiences that clearly they are big fans of. You know, Drake is trying to kind of be the, you know, what is it, the lowest common denominator and just appease to everybody. Jack Harlow is clearly trying to appeal to a more black-centric crowd. And I think that that is fine if that's who you are as a person, but I just don't get that from him. I don't get that this is who he is. I don't get that this is what his actual interest is. And so I think that this whole thing comes off disingenuous. The music is boring. I listened through the album, and I think it's just, like I said, it's so plain. I rated it a 5 or a 50 on Album of the Year. It's just very plain. It's very middle of the road. There are so many albums that do exactly what he's doing, but better. I can't see why someone would choose this. It's just like, why? So yeah, I feel like that's kind of all I had to say. A bit kind of ranty, but it's just like a frustrating thing of where you see a lot of music artists nowadays. And usually I feel like they don't make it to the limelight if they're like doing this, but you see these artists who are just not being genuine, not being themselves, or trying to appease to these different crowds, or to just a very specific crowd. And you're like, that's kind of weird. But for it to be someone who's so in the limelight and people are just giving it a pass, that's where I think the problem is with it. And like I said, normally wouldn't care about this, but obviously I'm huge into the rap sphere. I do think he's getting a lot of blowback from this project and his own commentary around the album and how he has been recently, and that does make me happy. I'm glad people are holding him accountable. They're not letting this stuff slide. The problem is you don't see a lot of people around him doing it. It's a lot of just regular people. You don't see these other artists, you know, saying anything. Occasionally you will have, you know, a couple outspoken artists who will say something about it, but, you know, unfortunately it's not enough for him to kind of be put back into his place. But yeah, that's it. Don't listen to the album. I would say listen to just anything else that's come out this year. There hasn't been too much bad music that I've heard this year, so yeah, listen to anything else. But that's it. Just want to talk about that. Jack Harlow just kind of grifting a bit. So yeah, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Will it be ranty like this? Maybe. Yeah, Thank you so much for watching. Bye now.